It says going live. Okay. You're live. All right. So
Yay.
Our first culture corner, Cardinalli Talks, we're trying it in 3 different places to see like which does the best, which reaches the most people. So some of you don't know like who we both are. Some of you do, but some of you don't know who we both are. Most of you, I mean, you know who I am, but who's this? Do they? Who's this person?
Good question. My name's Nina Cardinalli. No relation.
So while we're in quarantine, and maybe even after, we're going to start a regular chat with 2 generations of performers. And we both have very different things to contribute and experiences and opinions about the performing arts, being that we're 2 very different types when it comes to performing.
Wait, really?
I don't. We're both from different generations, and I've been in the performing arts for 20 years, and I'm now in education, and Nina's just getting into it. Also, regionally, you're in New York.
Yes, correct. Not right now, but generally speaking.
We're in Maryland. For those of you who don't know where we are in the world, we're in Maryland. But this is going to be a weekly thing. We're going to do this every Friday at 5. How is it affecting you?
Being a human being who is in college in a primarily performance-based program, it's been a strange transition for everyone involved. And that's not to say it's not a transition for everyone. But it's just because it came so suddenly, it's been a lot of trying to figure out what's happening with like all of my different professors, trying to figure out how performance classes are going to work, because the idea of getting a performance education online is not one that my institution has really thought about.
I don't think anyone has.
Yeah.
I mean, this has definitely taken people by surprise with like how without that human interaction, how do you give education? And you know, that's even what I'm struggling with. We've both been in our own rooms on our computers. She's receiving education and I've been giving education, and I find the hardest thing as a teacher, especially for dance. Voice isn't so hard, like it's just call and response, but for dance, it's the not being able to put your hands on someone and help them physically with corrections. And also there's no feedback.
Yeah.
Like there's no energetic feedback, and I'm drained because like performers aren't also giving back to me. Do you feel that on the student side?
Yeah, from the student side, it's exhausting trying to learn. I just 10 minutes ago got out of 6 straight hours of Zoom classes, and I am emotionally exhausted because trying to focus on a screen for that long is a lot. But also those classes were all academic classes. It's a little different. I've been taking a lot of classes with some of my favorite teachers in New York, like dance classes on Instagram Live and stuff. So it's a lot easier to be able to focus for longer periods of time when it's doing something physical. But the idea of just like sitting there and having a teacher screen share their PowerPoint presentation and talk at you for 3 hours is, it's a lot to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's hard for all students, and I think it's hard for the teachers too.
Yeah.
I have a stutter, so I have found that I'm even more self-conscious teaching now because I don't have the student interaction to like cover that up. It's permanently there forever. So that's hard. So the first we have 4 topics that we want to go through. And the first one you're going to kind of lead, and that's the current life of performers and what you've noticed and learned.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with Broadway shutting down and with all theaters in New York being forced to shut down, the vast majority of performers have been left unemployed, which is a super stressful situation for everyone in it. But in a way, it's also brought the New York theater community together because everyone's kind of struggling with the same thing. They're all unemployed, they're all really depressed, and they all can't leave the house. And so there have been a lot of fundraisers and benefits just through technology, through Instagram Live, through Facebook Live. There have been celebrities that either started in the theater community and expanded, or like were bigger celebrities and then came into theater. A lot of them have been doing like concerts and accepting donations through them, most of which are going into Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, or just general, like the Equity Association for Performers, as kind of an emergency fund to help pay most of the performers at least a little bit while they can't make any income, which is very necessary because the cost of living in New York is very high.
Well, and performers in general struggle anyway. It's such a huge divide between the performers that make a ton of money versus the ones that are just scraping by.
Yeah.
And I actually stumbled across today, there are grant programs, and we'll put them in the YouTube comments. There are grant programs for performers that all they have to do is apply if they've lost money, and they can get some money to help them through this hard time.
Yes.
And from my side, we were in production for 3 different shows, and all these performers, we are one day in rehearsal, and the next day we're just not. It just stopped.
They're actually, the musical 6 was set to open on Broadway the night that everything was canceled.
Ah, that's so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had our last rehearsal for a student-created production, and that was it. Fosse shut down, American in Paris, everything. So we have all these shows, up to perform, and we're all sitting at home.
Same thing happened at Marymount. They canceled every show for the rest of the semester that people had been rehearsing for months.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be. I don't like false hope. I think that's just how it's going to be until to be determined.
Yeah.
We're just, not going to be performing.
And my brain, I want to be a hopeful individual, to be like, oh, everything's going to reopen when they say it's going to reopen in April. As a person who was auditioning for a lot of stuff, because like January, February, March is all audition season for the summer season of a lot of theaters. So having auditioned for a lot of things and having been planning to audition for a lot of things, all of the auditions were canceled, starting like the week before everything closed down because everyone got so scared. And so there's been a lot of talk going around on the internet and forums and such about summer stock seasons. And there are a lot of theaters that have announced that their shows that weren't supposed to start rehearsing till like June or July, they're like pushing back their entire season or canceling it completely, which is putting a lot of performers out of work for the summer.
Well, and again, what I read last night was that this quarantine has to happen a couple of times in order to be the most effective. So although we might go back to work and we might be able to do a modified social distancing, this is going to happen again in order to try to save as many lives as possible to our more sensitive public, to try and keep them alive. So this is going to be a long-term problem, and I believe that with this many creative minds stuck at home, that we're going to have some creative solutions.
There already have been some, just with technology and YouTube, Facebook, Instagram.
In this camera, I'm like a floating orb. It's like there's so much. This one too, like it's so much light on. Yeah.
There's been a lot more like open access to the performing arts than there has been in the past, especially for people who may not have had the income or the financial ability to go see musicals or to go take drop-in dance classes in New York. Like a lot of teachers have been teaching, a lot of performers have found creative ways through technology to continue creating art and inspiring art. I've seen a lot more art being created on social media in the past couple weeks than I have pretty much ever.
However, it's not sustainable.
No.
So it's great that, all our performers, and I'm out there too, also putting as much information as I can out there. It's not sustainable for us in the industry. So there we go. How is this going to support? And that's where I kind of want to segue into, Broadway has never had a hit like this, like it will.
The closest thing in recent past that has affected Broadway, even nearly as much as this was 9/11.
9/11. And that's when I started in the industry, was right after 9/11. That's when I moved to New York.
But it kind of got back on its feet, honestly. And I learned this in musical theater history in my good college education. But the musical Mamma Mia was kind of what revamped the theater scene in New York after 9/11.
Yeah, it revamped pretty fast. But I want to look at what it was like in the 30s, in the 1930s, and how jobs in the performing arts were highly coveted, and performers were treated much differently back then because the well-connected, but the people were also coveted, which is different than we are now. If you think about the average American, they don't know who's on Broadway. They don't know who are our current best performers. They have no idea. Whereas in the 1930s, that was very different. You had musicals be in the top 100 charts all the way through the 70s. But with the introduction of television,
other cheaper forms of entertainment,
and more accessible, live performance went down in valuing the performer. And there became more jobs, especially with MGM entertainment in the 50s and 60s. And as we get into nowadays, we have reality TV entertainment for performers. It's not real. Okay. So I want to kind of bring up first, is the stigma of how young people want to be performers, is that going to continue? That, you're just a dumb dancer, or you just want to be an actor, or singers can't make it. All of those stigmas that are taught by our culture, by the majority of our culture, and discouraging people from having jobs in the performing arts. Do you think that it's not valued? However, it's highly valued because that's the only way everybody's getting any kind of entertainment right now. Everybody's online and valuing Netflix and Disney Plus and Instagram and live videos now, and all these free concerts. Do you think that the job itself of being a performer is going to be more valued as a actual living?
I think the job at a higher level will become more valued. However, I don't necessarily think that it will change the deep institutionalized lot of oh, you're going to theater and oh, how are you going to get a job?
Yeah.
A lot
What's your backup plan?
What's your backup plan? There is none. I'm throwing all my eggs into one basket. But
and that there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of value, and yet it is the primary way that we spend our time as a culture, is by taking in the performing arts, but we don't value those trying to build that skill and trying to build that as an actual trade.
I think part of that comes from the people who are valued in the industry are a very small fraction of people. It's kind of just the people who have made it to the very top, the celebrities. And there are so many other people who go into this field that are making a living, are supporting themselves, are doing what they love to be doing, who are pretty much not valued at all because they aren't the title name. There are so many ensemble roles in theater. I love Instagram accounts like The Ensemblist because people are finally starting to acknowledge those people
Mm-hmm.
in the chorus of shows, but even like in the way that theater programs in schools are set up. Like walk into a high school theater club and try and find me a child that's like, oh, I don't want to be a lead.
I know, and that's unfortunate because without the ensemble, and honestly, you have more flexibility to develop character work, and you have to have a very strong skill set with on that not being valued even by parents. How many parents are like, how come my kid's not the lead?
Yep, I've even gotten that in college.
But the value of being in the ensemble, and it's good work, guys, really good work. And that's just in theater. As a ballet dancer, I couldn't work in the corps. I wasn't strong enough and precise enough, and I'm the wrong height. I could not work in the corps. I could only be a soloist, and I had to work very hard to be a soloist, but I could not get a job dancing in the corps. There's a lot of value in filling the entire picture when it comes to any part of the performing arts. You need yeah. I'm just rambling.
No, I get heated about ensemble things too, because I'm an ensemble performer, and in high school, I was I want to lead. Why didn't I get the lead? But like, I have discovered in college that like I am more marketable. There isn't the same recognition. I like the sense of community within an ensemble, which I think is why that's kind of like where I'm working my way in. I don't know why I just did shark hands. But I digress. We've gone on a tangent.
We have. But so I think so you think that the stigma is not going to go away because it's too rooted in the culture. I think the stigma might. I think it might change, and because there's going to be less jobs, and we're going to be more aware of what's going on in the performing arts. At least that's my hope. That we'll be more aware of those live celebrities than we are currently.
I agree with awareness. However, with there's going to be less jobs, I think that part of the stigma comes from, people think there are a lot less jobs than there are, which is why when you tell someone you're going into the performing arts as a career, they're like, how are you going to make money? Because they assume that there are no jobs other than the big A-list celebrities.
Well, population's higher. So with not being able to congregate, we might be able to rebuild again. I'm going to jump to what's actually going to happen to the theaters, and I'm going to jump right into that. Let's start with dance companies first. So, listen, the medium companies, they might all die out. That's the reality. Yep. There's this middle class of dance companies where they don't have all the support of major corporate sponsors, and they don't have the audience base, but they're too big to survive it on a shoestring budget. And therefore, they're the ones that are going to suffer the most. I think the small companies where it's, 4 or 5 performers, we're talking tiny companies, they're going to make it because you can rehearse anywhere. And they're like a cockroach, going to be able to find a little hole and be able to survive. And then, of course, the big companies will be fine. But there, again, is going to be less job for dancers that may not be as skilled. There's going to be less work for them, and that's scary. I think
it's gonna, for lack of a better term, weed out the weak ones.
Let's talk about that before we go into theater and music. What's going to happen to performers themselves?
Like, I think to be a successful performer, there is a baseline amount of drive that you need to have. And that's just the industry. You have to be able to get up and go to an audition and not get a callback, and then get up and go to an audition and get a callback, rehearse for that callback while you're going to other auditions. You have to be able to just keep going no matter how much rejection you might get.
And resilience from it.
Yeah. So I think that without the opportunity to even do that, a lot of people are going to figure out that like, this is not the easy option. And going into the performing arts is by no means easy or convenient. And I think with the theater and performing arts communities needing to rebuild themselves after this, I think it's going to be even harder, and it's going to be even more rejection, and it's going to be even more auditioning. And I think that a lot of people are just going to give up.
But on the other hand, I think a lot of people that give up were the ones that were taking up space as it was. And that's kind of a cold, hard truth, is you have a lot of people that go to auditions taking up space that they are entitled. They think they have a right to be there. They think that because they were on a dance team that they are good enough to then be paid to work. And realistically, they're not putting in the time. They're not taking voice lessons. They're not trying to get into acting classes if they're not in any show. They're not trying to just take any job. They're not in ballet class. They're not working on themselves. And I think the ones that have the drive and resilience are the ones that are going to be home still working on their craft.
Yep.
And when we get on the other side of this, there's going to be this major divide. Instead of having the talented, the less talented, and the untalented, I think you're just going to have one or the other. I think this middle area, because they don't have the convenience of class or the accountability from friends and neighbors to like, come on, we need to get to class. You're going to have people that actually do the work. And so there will be less performers, but I think the ones that'll get the work are the ones that do the work at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely about maintaining, because I don't think there's any performer who could go through a month of not performing, not training, not studying, not actively working to build their craft that could survive. Like, I take a week off of ballet classes and I can feel it in my body, let alone a month of not doing anything.
Well, and we've both been taking class while we've been here at home, just trying to stay in shape and continue, keeping the muscles strong.
Out here trying to get quarantined.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
Do we put a hashtag in front of that? Is that how that works?
Oh, I'm too Gen Z to do that.
Okay. That's more my generation.
Yeah.
We're try too hard. Broadway we will rebuild. There won't be as many producers though. And it's gonna have to be on a cheaper budget.
Yeah.
In order to create. So things like, that this spectacle that we are now expecting, like King Kong, is not going to happen. We can't build that stuff right now. I mean, you laugh, but seriously, like there's this expectation.
King Kong in general.
There's this expectation of creating shows like that, and it's just not going to be available. Rely on the skill of the performer.
I was gonna say if not closed, then at least not reopen. Even on Broadway, even on that large of a scale. I think shows like Hamilton, Wicked, Lion King, ones that have been on Broadway long enough to have built up enough money to kind of cushion the producers and the theater and the performers
and the
while
costumes
they are all,
all the
not
costs
around.
Yeah.
But shows like, say, in previews, when everything shut down, might just like not have had the opportunity to make enough money to be able to survive through this.
Now, performers outside of let's move away from Broadway. We talk about tour and cruises. My fear is that those are just going to stop altogether, at least for a year. Because
I have a friend, he was a music director in a show that I was in a year ago. And he was the conductor on the national tour of Once on This Island. And they canceled their tour, and it was just the most heartbreaking thing. And so now he's, I think, back in New York and as unemployed as everyone else. But I don't know what they're doing with cruises, though. That's an interesting...
They're shut down.
I mean, yeah,
but who's going to want to be on a cruise after this? There's that. And then regional theaters, again, it's that middle group, or big community theaters they're still in that middle area of funders and not being so big that they'll survive. It's the smaller ones, the tiny ones, that will probably scrape through and be able to make it, unless everybody goes down to bare bones and relies on the skill set of the performers and not so much spectacle. With that, I kind of want to talk about those performances that are spectacle, like Cirque du Soleil.
Mm.
Those performers, I mean, the amount of training and work that those performers
Absolutely
do.
ridiculous.
I don't know if you guys know they perform twice a day, and then rehearse after they've performed. And for the most part, how they're affected, how they stay in shape, being in quarantine without trainers, without people to make sure that they're safe and healthy, and then how do they get back into the show, be able to hit their marks? I mean, if you're not precise, you die. So what happens to those shows and all the costs of maintaining the spectacle? What happens to that? And will people be able to congregate and see those productions? I'm afraid that a large company, even as large as Cirque du Soleil, may suffer to such a great extent that it may not survive either.
I think it depends on how long this lasts and on how long we have before it happens again. I think that production companies as large as Cirque and as widespread as Cirque, I think, or I would like to think that they have made enough money to be able to cushion their performers and cushion their shows while everything is shut down. However, I think that touring Cirque shows have a better chance of surviving than resident Cirque shows. I think that cities with resident Cirque shows could close just because they don't have the money to also then support the performers and fund the space. A lot of it is being able to afford the space and stay in your space and keep the space maintained. So I think that touring companies, despite being shut down, do have a better chance of surviving.
Well, my sister lives in Vegas, and she said it's the strangest thing. I mean, Vegas is dark. The Strip is dark. That is bizarre.
They still have the lights on in Times Square. Not sure for who, but I'm glad they're on. It'd be very stressful if they were not.
My thought is, with streaming and the accessibility of the performing arts online, is that the unions will be able to work together so that we can stream what has been recorded for the live performers, and they can get royalties for their work from being on stage. That way we can still support those performers through live streaming and being able to then just repeat the shows, get them some royalties so those performers survive. The last area is live music, opera, concerts, live singers and bands. Again, there's so many people online giving free content. I shared, I cannot pronounce his last name. He's a famous French cellist, Gautier, and I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. But he's my favorite cellist. And he did a hour performance. Matt Bednarski, we love, and he has a performance on Thursday. Again. Yeah, so we're gonna watch that at home. But a lot of performers are just giving their skills away. Again, what are they gonna do? I watched I think Hungarian Philharmonic rehearse Swan Lake at home together. Like, they all had headpiece in to rehearse Swan Lake.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Oh my gosh, I know, with just lag time, like how do you, but again, like, what's going to happen? Are smaller philharmonics or smaller opera companies or just starting out singer-songwriters and bands, are they going to survive? Are only the ones that are famous going to survive?
I think a lot is the hope that the fan bases that they have built up will be able to donate. A lot of it right now for performers is solely donations. Like I saw earlier today that the Met is doing like a couple showings of some of their shows that they've been working on, and they're taking donations. most of the teachers that I've taken from have been like, if you have money to donate, please donate. So I truly think it's just based on like,
but then we're also out of work. You know, like the average person could be out of work for a long time and not able to donate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what it comes down to is the ones that are still working and the ones that are still trying and pushing through, giving their art away, will be the ones to survive, because as we can see online, it's still really valued. So with that, we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap this up and go to an end. Is there anything else you want to talk about regarding the industry?
Sorry, I'm wrapping it up. No, I think that's kind of it. It's obviously a constantly evolving situation, which is super difficult on
and
performers.
Unsettling.
Yeah, and it's had a super hard impact, I know, on a lot of performers' mental health, just having that like looming uncertainty over the future of like not just their own career, but over the future of the industry as a whole. So it's definitely just like a lot of trying to channel your creative energy into something. If there's one bit of like advice or whatever I can give for performers that might be watching this, it's just like find something to channel your creative energy into.
And share anything that performers are creating. Get it out there. You have a favorite performer, share it. Not just cat videos. Share it. And not just politics. We need more love. We need more creativity. We need more catharsis. We need more ways to remind ourselves of our humanity. And we do that through performing arts. Someone creates something, share it. Share it with each other. Help keep it alive. So we're going to do a regular 5:30 live stream on our Culture Corner. If you have any topics you want us to discuss, please put it in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. We've decided we're going to do our next week on the effects of blind color casting in shows and our point of views on that. We have two very different points of view, so this should be exciting. Is there anything else that I'd share? Share, like, subscribe, comment.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, so I'm Ali Cardinalli.
I'm Nina Cardinalli.
And that's 2 generations of Cardinalli Talks. Have a great, inspiring day.